Hey there, welcome back to the Stay at Home Detectives podcast. Today we're covering the mysterious disappearance of Maura Murray. So let's dive right in. Maura Murray was a 21-year-old Hanson, Massachusetts native. She was a standout student athlete who was enrolled in the nursing program as a junior at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst. Maura left her dorm on the evening of February 9, 2004, after telling professors there was a death in the family, but that wasn't true. At approximately 7:27 p.m. on February 9, 2004, a woman named Faith Westman called the police in Haverhill, New Hampshire, to report an accident on Route 112. A black Saturn appeared to be stuck in a ditch near her home. The dispatcher immediately sent out an officer to check the scene.
By 7:42 p.m., authorities received another call about the same accident from a local bus driver named Butch Atwood. He reported that the driver was a young woman who was shaken up but appeared to be unharmed. Atwood stated that he offered to call the police, but the woman claimed that she had already called roadside assistance. Atwood claims that he called the police anyway when he arrived home, which was approximately 100 yards away from the accident. He said that he was unable to see the woman's car from his home, but he did see other cars passing by on the road. At 7:46 p.m., the first responding officer had arrived on the scene, but the mysterious young woman was nowhere to be found. After an initial search of the area, authorities learned that the missing woman was 21-year-old Maura Murray. After Maura vanished in Haverhill that evening, she was never seen again.
So let's talk about the bizarre events leading up to Maura's disappearance. 3 months before she disappeared, Maura was arrested for using a stolen credit card, but the charge was supposed to be dismissed if she maintained good behavior for 3 months. On February 5th, 2004, Maura had an emotional phone conversation with her sister Kathleen, who was struggling with addiction and issues with her fiancé. At that time, Maura was at her campus security job and was so distraught by the call that she had to be escorted back to her dorm. On February 7th, 2004, Maura's father, Fred, traveled to Amherst to take her car shopping and to dinner. After arriving at his motel room, he then borrowed Maura his car so she could drive back to her dorm and attend a party that night. On her way back to the motel the next morning, Maura crashed her father's car into a guardrail. Although she was unharmed, the car was seriously damaged. Aside from being upset over the accident, Fred stated that Maura seemed to be fine when he took her back to her dorm later that day. The next morning, on February 9th, 2004, everything changed. Maura emailed her professors to say that she would be taking a week off due to a death in the family. Her relatives later clarified that there was no death in the family. Maura also emailed her boyfriend, Bill Roche, a U.S. Army lieutenant in Oklahoma, that she loved him and didn't feel like talking to anyone, but that she would call him later that day. Maura called the owner of a condo in Bartlett, New Hampshire, where she had stayed before with family, but did not reserve a room. She also called a booking hotline in Stowe, Vermont, but again did not reserve a room. By that point, she had used the internet to look up directions to Burlington, Vermont. It's unclear what her planned destination was meant to be because she didn't tell anyone where she was going.
Around 3:15 p.m., Maura drove to an off-campus ATM and withdrew $280. She then went to a liquor store and purchased $40 worth of alcohol. She also stopped by the Registry of Motor Vehicles and picked up the forms for her car accident. At 4:37 p.m., she placed a call to her own voicemail. It is the last recorded instance that she ever used her phone. Little is known about Maura's whereabouts between her errands in Amherst and her crash in Haverhill hours later, which likely happened between 7 and 7:25 p.m. The 911 calls from the locals who reported the accident were placed at 7:27 p.m. and 7:42 p.m. By 7:46 p.m., Maura had disappeared. The first officer on the scene found a damaged car but no driver. The vehicle was locked and the airbags had been deployed. The officer who wrote up the report said evidence at the scene indicated that the vehicle had been eastbound and had gone off the roadway, struck some trees, spun around and came to rest facing the wrong way in the eastbound lane. The officer continued. In plain sight behind the driver's seat of the vehicle, I could see a box of Franzia wine. I could also see red liquor on the driver's side door and ceiling of the car. The officer also discovered a Coke bottle that contained a red liquor and a strong alcoholic odor. There was also printed MapQuest directions to Burlington, Vermont. There were no obvious signs of foul play, and there were no footprints in the snow that led into the nearby woods. The officer first asked Atwood, the last known person to speak with Maura, to give him a hand with the search. Eventually, a state trooper showed up, followed by firefighters and emergency medical personnel.
While they began combing the area west of the scene, it is believed that no one went east during the initial search. This was one of the many things that Maura's father, Fred, would criticize about how the police handled the search. Fred claims that he knew that she was headed east and that she was allegedly headed to Bartlett, although there was no concrete evidence to indicate that. Police believe that Maura may have been trying to commit suicide, and they even put out a press release shortly after her disappearance saying that she was possibly suicidal. Her father has denied this allegation and stated that she was in good spirits and had no worries or reason to run away from her life. Though many of her loved ones believe that Maura simply intended to get away from the drama for a few days, there were signs that she intended for her disappearance to be permanent. A search of her dorm room revealed that she had packed up most of her belongings into boxes before she left. Atop one of the boxes was a printed email to her boyfriend, which detailed problems in their relationship. While Maura had left some of her belongings in the car, a few key items were missing, such as her cell phone and backpack. However, her phone was never used again after she went missing, and her bank accounts remained dormant. Since her disappearance in 2004, only alleged sightings, dead ends, and speculative theories have emerged. So we want to chat about some of the theories in this story because there's so many of them. And I think with all of the events leading up to her disappearance, there's a lot of room for speculation, right? So we're going to cover about 5 different theories that are probably the most popular ones within this case, but there are so many other theories that have been circling around throughout the years. So Sam, dive right into the first theory.
The first theory is that she committed suicide. But many of her loved ones argue that the things she packed and stored in her car, such as birth control, tooth whitener, and college textbooks, had many believe that she was not intending on dying that day. Why would a suicidal person pack those items?
Right.
I mean, but if she committed suicide, they would have found her by now. That was a really long time ago. It's a hard theory.
Right. I think, I mean, I guess there are some things to indicate that. Like I do see, based on some of the events leading up to her disappearance, the multiple car wrecks that she had and the arrest for the credit card fraud. I mean, I could see that, but I just don't think there was enough evidence supporting it.
Depends if there was, like a lake or... But then I feel like it would have still come up by now. It's 2023. Right.
But if you think about it, it was the middle of winter. Mm-hmm. So there was snow. It was cold. I mean, I guess there was some like a rural foresty area nearby, but I know they searched that. So I'm sure they would have found her. So I just have a hard time believing that she did because like you said, I think that they would have found her pretty quickly if that was the case.
Yep.
The next theory is that she simply panicked after crashing her car only hours after damaging her father's vehicle and escaped the area to avoid getting in trouble. Considering the amount of alcohol found at the scene, authorities believe that Maura had been drinking and driving and didn't want to risk jeopardizing her record of good behavior after her credit card fraud arrest. A lot of people speculate that she may have escaped on foot, moving east of the accident scene, since that area was not inspected during the first search. Some believe that Maura started a new life for herself, perhaps in Canada, to escape her legal issues. There was supposedly a witness that stated they had seen who they believed was Maura on foot traveling east, but the timeline didn't match up. I know that when he contacted authorities, I believe it was way further down the road after her disappearance, and there just would have been no way she would have been able to travel on foot that long. That theory was potentially debunked based on that, but who knows? I mean, I guess anything's possible, right?
She could have hitchhiked.
She could have. She could have hitchhiked and started a new life. But yeah, I mean, her cell phone was missing. Her backpack was missing. It's possible.
But again, it's been almost 20 years at this point,
It's been a really long time. And the fact that nothing really happened with her bank accounts, I mean, how would she really have lived off of $280? Let's say that that's all she had on her from what she took out at the ATM. Starting a new life on $280, I just find that hard to believe. But you never know. I mean, it has been a really long time, though. I think that she most likely would have been found after all these years if that was the case.
Another theory is that she was abducted. Her father believes that she was taken by someone local, although residents do not agree and believe that it was a wrong place, wrong time situation, and Maura was taken by a random kidnapper who just happened to be on the road that day. Honestly,
Yeah.
that could probably be one of the best theories.
Yeah, I would say that that's probably the one theory that I believe. I do personally believe that she was abducted. I think that because there were so many cars passing by on that road, it was a busy road, to get in and out of that town or in and out of town in general. I think that's probably the most likely most likely to happen type of scenario.
They could have killed her. She could be
Anywhere.
Yeah.
She could be anywhere because especially if that person, again, I don't believe it was somebody local either. I think it was a passerby, and who knows where that person was from.
Yep.
If they were a truck driver, who knows? She could be anywhere at this point. So another theory is that her boyfriend was involved. Maura's boyfriend had been accused of sexual misconduct with other women in the past, and some believe that with the email that Maura had printed and placed on a box in her dorm, talking about the issues with their relationship, that there may have been motive for him to somehow be involved with her disappearance. Although that was never proven valid since he was in Oklahoma during the time she went missing.
I don't really think he had anything to do with that.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I'm curious to know exactly what that email said that was printed on the box, because in the events leading up to her disappearance, she spoke to her boyfriend through email again, as we know, and she had stated that she was going to call him that day and that she loved him. So I just find that hard to believe that he played a part in that, especially being so far away. I just don't see how that's possible.
It's kind of how I feel about the last one with Butch Atwood being involved. Since he was the last one who saw Maura alive, many believe that Atwood was involved in her disappearance. Many think it's suspicious that he didn't wait with Maura until help arrived, especially since he claimed that she seemed shaken up. He and his wife also moved to Florida shortly after, which led many to consider that suspicious behavior. That's kind of a really open-ended theory. I mean, yeah he could have waited with her, but, he asked her if she was okay, and
he called the police.
Yeah.
So I guess that's where I myself feel like it's completely debunked, is because he called the police. And I guess maybe some people can argue that, well, maybe he did that to make it seem like he wasn't a guilty party in her disappearance. But I mean, he was married. He lived literally just a few hundred yards from that site. I find it hard to believe that he would have had enough time to do something with her and dispose of her body in that short amount of time, from the time that he made the phone call to 911 to the time that Maura disappeared. I mean, we're talking minutes.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So in November 2021, New Hampshire State Police announced that human bone fragments had been found just 25 miles away from North Haverhill in the Loon Mountain area. However, radiocarbon dating revealed that the remains were far older than Maura, and they are currently investigating the identity of the individual whose remains they are. Unfortunately, there have been no other breaks in the case, and it remains cold to this day. We will continue to cover this case, and we'll share any updates that may come to light in the future. Well, we're going to wrap it up here today. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time. Stay at home detective style.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.